Welcome back to The Remote Life. My name is Han Talbot, also known as Han Meets World, and today we'll be chatting with Tanja Polegubic. Helping cities and companies to stand out to global remote professionals, Tanja is the founder of Saltwater Nomads and co-founder of the Digital Nomad Association Split. In this episode, we talk about the importance of community, behind the scenes of a business, and how remote lifers can have an impact on tourism. So grab a coffee, a tea, or something stronger, and let's get started. So Tanja, welcome to the Remote Life podcast. How are you?
I'm great. I have COVID, but I'm great otherwise.
And even as I asked that, I was like, oh, that was a silly question. But thank you so much for making the time. And yeah, I really appreciate you pushing through at the moment. So just to dive straight in, connect the dots for us. Tell us a bit about yourself and your work and how Saltwater Nomads came to be about.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Han. It's great to be here. And I don't normally sound like this. I feel like I sound very nasal. So I was working as a consultant and really wanted to base in Croatia for a little while. So my heritage is, and I am a dual citizen of Australia and Croatia. So it's something I'd explored for a long time and pitched the idea to who I was working with at the time as a consultant as a trial, like, oh, let me just try this out. Also because a lot of the people, it was an international development role, were never in the office. Everyone was out in the field. And so I was like, well, no one else is here. And none of our projects were in that city or even country. So I took that chance and knew early on this is what I wanted. So when I did return for my second installment, which was longer, I started looking for a workspace because I knew I didn't want to just stay in my apartment because I intended on staying a lot longer. And the co-work trend at the time in Canberra, where I'm from, was really taking off. Like there were, expansions, multi-level government departments were starting to offer hot desking to add that flexibility. So the wave was already happening elsewhere, and I didn't really see it as much in Croatia. There were certainly co-work spaces, particularly in Zagreb and even Split, but the local population weren't so much adopting remote work. It was people from outside, or digital nomads, as we refer to them. So that's how it all started. I wasn't originally Saltwater Nomads. Prior to this chat, we talked about the term digital nomad. I'm not a huge fan, but it's the term that's everywhere. So just rolling with it. And I was previously Saltwater Split, but when I started working with other cities, I was like, well, probably not a good idea to call myself Split. So I changed it to Saltwater Nomad.
Just out of curiosity, what term would you prefer? Because, I completely agree. I feel like Nomads is kind of its own little separate niche now, whereas like remote life, remote workers, like it's a little bit of a different one. So what's your thoughts and feelings? Like, do you have a preference around the term then?
I do. I mean, I guess my hope in the next, 5 to 10 years is that remote is just completely dropped and it's just anything, whether worker, staff, team member. But for now, I like remote professional.
Ooh, okay. I like that. That's a new term. I like that. 'Cause in my mind, nomad relates, it makes me think of somebody who's constantly traveling. And as we know, like not everybody's doing that.
That's right.
Yeah. No, cool. I like the remote professional. I like that. Okay. Saltwater Nomads, like who's it for? How did it come about? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So it started off as a co-work space, which I don't know if anyone listening or if you know yourself directly, they don't make money, particularly in a seasonal town.
Sure.
Split, like many places, it's really high rents. So it's as running on the smell of an oily rag to try and make it viable. And so I do a lot of other projects as a result. So it's kind of like this brick and mortar space, which is good, but it's certainly not my core business. I wish it was, but it's not. And so I do consulting work and events.
Awesome. Okay, so in your eyes, because of course, like you guys do Friday night dinner meetups as well in Split, right? And yeah. So what kind of made you think about starting that, and like why in your eyes is community so important for people who are remote?
So that's an easy one to answer. So obviously, when people come to co-working, they can work from their own apartment. So they're coming there for a couple of reasons. One of them is productivity. Sometimes you just need that mental break from your apartment, and being forced to go somewhere changes that for you, or you have better internet. But the other one is meeting people. So, there's obviously a lot of people who also due to COVID didn't want to come into co-work spaces because you're sharing a space. So with the partner that I work with in the winter season, her hostel, which is right in the centre, we pack away the beds and put in desks because otherwise it's an empty space for about 6 months of the year. And so that's been a lovely partnership. And her and her other business partner have a couple of restaurants and bars that's homegrown. And so we started to create a cheaper menu and just a consistent thing to say, hey, if you're new in town or if you want to meet people and you live here, rain, hail or shine, we hold this event. And sometimes, there's about 6 people, sometimes there's 36. So, it really varies on who's in town and it's a lot of fun. We do icebreakers. And it's great to see people hanging out after having met at that event.
For sure. I met a few people not that long ago when I first arrived, and there's just such a really calm, chilled vibe about everybody here, like from locals, expats, remote lifers. Everyone's so relaxed and just wants to create community, make friends and like hang out and talk about, like it was just the funniest thing, like walking in, people being like, so taxes, like, how do you make it work? And it was like, it sounds so dull, but it's like, these are the conversations I want to have with people who get it.
Yeah, for sure.
So much.
And that's the thing, you have so many things in common, whether it's, the next destination to travel to or tips like, I'm planning on going where you've just been. And as you said, in finding work, so freelancers, sharing those tips, it's just invaluable.
For sure. And speaking of Split, where is one place like coffee shop, sites, viewpoint, beach that you think you'd recommend that people have to go when they get here?
See, I'm not one of those tourist like checkbox people.
No.
I don't even go to Muddy on the Hill that often. My partner does. I don't.
It's a beautiful place where you can see the city. Sorry, just so people know, like that viewpoint is where you can see the sunset and up the city. Like, sorry, just for people who haven't been to Split. Sorry,
true.
You were saying the water.
Sorry. Yeah, for me, it's just getting close to the water, whether it's down on a walk on Butchwitzer Beach or even on the river, taking coffee in there with the palm trees and the water. That's Split for me.
100%. I'm literally a 3-minute walk from Butchwitzer Beach, and oh my gosh, I could not have picked a better spot for myself. Just knowing that you can pick up, like you said, make yourself a coffee in 3 minutes. You're on the beach, and maybe not going in the sea because it is February, but it's so cold. But it's just, it's so mesmerizing just being able to sit there and just with your coffee. Or I made myself dinner the other day and took it down to the beach. Just the best thing ever. So great.
Yeah, I've done that too, taking a burger down with a friend and just sitting with your legs dangling over. It's great.
Just amazing. I am sad to be leaving, I'm not going to lie, just for the ease of having the beach that close. We're going to take a bit of a serious turn now. So how do you think digital nomads and remote lifers can contribute to the tourism industry moving forward, whether that's here in Split, Croatia, or just in your opinion overall?
I actually did a presentation yesterday on the benefits digital nomads bring, so I have these answers already, and I've seen them before. Well, obviously the first one is economic. So particularly in a place that only has a peak period, you can now stretch out, and it's not just about someone making more money through the year, but keeping people employed, self-retention, and raising that morale, and bringing certainty to people's lives. When they know that they'll have a job year round, not just for the season. I think people don't really realise how great a benefit that is. So economic for one. I think it also assists with promoting this idea of repopulation, particularly for smaller areas. So, and that's not just limited to Croatia. So, as you said, you can work from anywhere. So why not go to a smaller place, or perhaps even an ancestral village, or somewhere that you have a link to that you would otherwise just maybe have passed through for a day, like actually getting to stay a bit longer. Also, the less impact on the environment, you're not as crowding and trying to get these, fast boats to the Blue Cave or whatever it is that happens in summer. People can take their time and go to an island and get there on a more sustainable method of just the regular ferry rather than the speedboat. So, there's many, many ways that it's a better effect on our surrounds. And I think the knowledge exchange is probably my favourite one. I know you asked about tourism in particular, but you can connect with a local school or entrepreneur community, IT sector. So that knowledge exchange, I think, is really valuable. But I would say that applies to tourism too, because you're showing that, hey, these are new products and services that you can offer outside of your regular peak. So and that are more sustainable and, could last for a lot longer. So, manifold benefits for this, I would say.
No, I think that's brilliant. I completely agree. For the science, right before, of course, always for the science, right before the pandemic, I was in Bali and I was like, my communication brain is saying, I've got to book onto an Instagram tour for the science. And that to me was like, wow, something has got to change. Because every place that you went to, it was like, you're going to queue for 6 hours if you want the Instagram like spot. It was really surreal seeing like people take the actual image of what we see on Instagram and then seeing the queue that was snaking around behind it.
Yeah.
I was giggling about it because I was like, wow. Like, even asking my tour guide, I was like, so tell me about this place. And he was like, he had no idea what to say because he was like, you want to know more? And I think I completely agree that it's about, at some point we've got to kind of move away from, and this is why, in my opinion, I think remote life and digital nomads, and I think you kind of said it so well, we're moving into this space of being more intentional and being more mindful about where we are staying, where we're going, for how long, and just being a bit aware of like what it is we're going to travel for, what we're going to spend extra time for. So no, I completely agree. Can we find your presentation anywhere or?
Yes, I think so. I think it's on YouTube now. I do have to say I was quite brutal because it was a push for the City of Split to assist with private-led initiatives. And so I hit some strong stats out there and didn't hold back. I don't think I was the most popular presenter, but I think that's the only way you can get attention and make change. So it should be on YouTube. I guess I can send it to you and you can add to show notes.
Absolutely. I'll have a little look, but I might just follow you up on that one. But because I don't know if you saw in the news also recently that tourism boards are now trying to put more money into remote life and digital nomads initiatives as well.
In Croatia or globally?
I'm not sure about Croatia specifically, but I think Europe, there's some spaces in Europe that they are now. So
yeah.
We'll see how that unfolds and whether they take some of your points on. That'd be interesting. They're going back to kind of the more like questions again. In your opinion, someone's come to Split or Zagreb or another part of Croatia. What to you is like the epitome of a Croatian vibe? Like, if someone wants to really get into it.
Yeah, I'll give a coastal answer and then an answer for the capital because I feel it's a different vibe. I think a lot of it goes around food because some of it might be things that people haven't explored or, if you're on the sea, take advantage of seafood because, as you said, the beach is right there. So the fish market is out there daily. So, you're getting fresh produce. So, any fresh produce market, I think that's a good way. And also you can connect with locals in that way, whether they're the seller or it's a dinner that you go to. So to learn a bit about that. And then with the capital, I feel like it's a different vibe. So, you have Zagreb is active year round. So any time of year you can go out and you're going to run into people, which I think is lovely. So finding some of those little pockets, little neighbourhoods, sort of either grungy or higher end, like you've got your mix of it. And I think that's what's quite dynamic, to be in a European capital. I just love that about the city. So that one for me is what I would do in Zagreb. Also, like walking around Zagreb, really popular and things that people don't really consider. So, taking some walking shoes and exploring the city because it's so walkable. I mean, I know I'm not from a very walkable city, so that's what I like about being in the centre in a European city is to go explore it by foot.
Zagreb definitely has a lot of stories that you wouldn't necessarily see on the internet as well. Like, I completely agree about that. I was going to say it was a very European thing, but I imagine it's just a very human thing. Like the best way to get to know a culture is through food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't think anyone will argue with being told to eat their way through a place.
That's great. So, of course, you're based in Canberra in Australia right now. Are you seeing any kind of difference or like any push towards sort of more digital nomad remote life initiatives there as well? Because I feel like Canberra is not somewhere we would talk about as much.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not a tourist town. So I guess to answer that, obviously there's a lot of Aussies who are digital nomads already around the world. Everyone runs into the Aussies everywhere they go. So I would say pre-pandemic, everyone who was already nomading was already out because I'm sure you're aware, everyone got stuck for a couple of years. I couldn't get back in this whole time. So I think that it will be something that picks up, but my sense and conversations that I have, people these next 12 months, they're still hesitant to leave because of the trickiness of getting back. I mean, and this is a place that hasn't gone anywhere for 2 years. It's not like it was the first lockdown and then people kept traveling. Like, yeah, it's a very different feel from Europe here. So I wouldn't really expect to see a surge in a while. And also people are starting to go back to the office. Yeah, I don't know enough to comment really on overall will people adopt going abroad, because I imagine taxes and things is an issue. And people aren't really aware of the whole movement and travel anyway at the moment. So I don't think digital nomads is a thing yet. But once it catches on, I think it's going to be quite popular.
Sure. You touched on a very interesting point there about kind of initiatives and things like that. So for anybody who is maybe listening who is not a digital nomad or is kind of thinking about it, what is one way that you think, the average traveller could do to have a positive impact on travel?
You mean for their own personal experience, or what anyone should do?
So say someone wants to even do a week somewhere, like what could they do? In my opinion, for example, I am always trying to tell people about how to find use clothing banks or like have your keep cups. Like it's all kind of small stuff, but it's still enough. In my mind, it's the small things that contribute to making a bit of an impact on where you are going. But I don't know if you have any different thoughts.
So the first thing that springs to mind is supporting year-round businesses. That's something that I never really considered because I'm from a city where a business is open year-round. So, and, having seen it firsthand, it's very hard to stay open in those off months. So by going to those kind of businesses, that support helps them thrive. And I think that their staff are better because they're valued. So that would be my number one way to give an impact and knowingly make an impact. And then I guess the mode of travel. So if you are normally in a rush and just want to fly everywhere, there's alternatives now that you can take, like the train. If Europe's on people's radar, and the train, I love the train. That's a nice way that you can add to your journey while bringing benefit. I was actually researching something for the program I was doing. I was calculating the carbon, and I was just floored at how far Munich to a city by train was versus flying the same route. So and for only several hours difference really when you factor in traveling to the airports and back. So so mode of travel and time you can now take. Slow madism, I guess.
Yeah, and I was talking about, I have an accountability partner and she's from the States originally, and she was just completely stunned at how nonchalantly I was talking about just moving from 2 different countries in Europe by train. And I was like, oh, well, I might take a bus, I might take a train. And of course, it's so much cheaper as well, because coming from the UK where train travel is so ridiculously expensive as well, it almost costs it's the same amount as your flight going out of the UK as just to get to the airport. Versus, my train from Ljubljana in Slovenia to Zagreb cost about £20, maybe. It means
and probably so beautiful. Yeah,
absolutely. And even places like the Renfe in Spain, from Madrid to Valencia was the most luxurious experience. And of course, you're seeing all these beautiful little Spanish villages and things like that. I think. Yeah, I completely agree. Public transport is just so underrated, especially in Europe.
And oftentimes the train station is quite central compared to an airport, so you're actually benefiting in that way as well.
Makes for better stories as well, right? As well, taking public transport.
And you can keep working on them. If you're on the plane, the Wi-Fi, the power, etc.
Absolutely, completely agree. So what is one thing you wish you had known before you started your business?
There's definitely more than one thing. I didn't know anything, and I still don't have a very good idea. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't do a budget. I would do a lot of things differently. Have at least a plan. Get a budget in place. And also, I think it's cliche, but, what is the low-hanging fruit? I often put a lot of energy into things that definitely didn't make money and won't make money. And, while that felt good, it's not viable. And so, you're kind of burning yourself out on one thing because then you have to go and do the other thing that you're doing. So I've got a bit better at that. And also knowing that and this is where I'm currently at, the things that I don't like to do, either completely stop them or find someone else that wants to do that part, because it doesn't serve anyone. I would say finance is one of those things. So I'm working with a lovely local lady who wants to learn skills in an accountant management, financial management software. So, it's taking a bit longer, but it's like, this is exactly what I want to phase out of my work week. And this is what this person wants to build as a skill. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, I would say you're doing pretty well, because didn't you win some awards and things as well? Saltwater Nomads won some awards?
Yeah, so, the event side is completely new. I did not plan to. So I guess a business plan didn't even matter. I started doing events to raise the profile for digital nomad activities in Croatia, because an event is great. It's like taking that small meetup on the Friday and amplifying it, especially at this time, because a lot of people just wanted to see other people and it had been so long. And so, yeah, I've done events in Australia more as a community volunteer and also for work, but never really considered myself to be that, but now I am. So I'm embracing it. And yeah, we won 4 international awards, one for sustainability too, which I'm very proud of, because that's, so designing a program to have, less impact on the environment. So.
Amazing. No, you're doing amazing work. And what is kind of one thing or 2 things, I'm saying one, please don't feel limited to, one thing that people don't necessarily see when you're running a business? One thing people maybe think about that looks simple at the front, like the amount of times I've been told, like, oh, I could never do events like you guys because there's a lot more back end to it, for example, than it looks, of course. So a lot of people, it's like, oh, you put a Facebook event up and that's it. Like, no, there's so much more to it.
Okay, yeah. Something that people don't really see when you're in a business. Yeah, obviously a lot of the behind the scenes. So I think with that, it's the thing for Split in particular is the negotiating needed for some things. So, I have a certain expectation of how I want something, and it's not always, doesn't always happen that way. So, yeah, and a lot of energy goes into that. And so, and I'm talking months of time for some things. And so that never gets, I don't publicise it either, because it's not worth publicising,
no, of course.
Whether it's not, Instagrammable or whatever. It's not even that. It's like, I don't really want to share this because this is currently not a pleasant thing and I have to work through something for what I want. So, yeah, I haven't really even thought about that. So it's a great question.
Yeah, I suppose the only other way I could probably phrase it also is, because I think one thing that I come across consistently and have done quite a bit is people will come up to me and go, I'm going to start a blog. Great, good for you. I've got 3 blog ideas, I'm going to put them up, and okay, great. What are you going to do after those 3 blog posts? Because I think in their mind, it of course, like a big, not a joke, but a kind of comment within the content creator industry, for example, and I think business owners as well. If it looks simple, then we're doing a good job. If it looks like what we do is simple to you and very straightforward, we're doing our job. And I think that's kind of where I was going with that. So I wonder if there's anything, and you've obviously mentioned a couple of things already, but I think that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah. I guess, the other thing I would add to that, and I think it is to your point, like certain things take a long time because you're building up a bank of either knowledge or relationships or whatever it is. And so when you finally release something, it looks like it was, I just decided to do that, whereas it's months and sometimes years of expertise have gone into that. And so, yes, here.
I guess just to maybe kind of counteract that. So when you are having those moments of like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever to do, or like you're kind of just in one of those days where it's just kind of struggling, I guess. What do you do, or do you have like a mission at all that kind of keeps you going in those kind of long months of negotiation?
Okay, so what do I do in those scenarios? Well, I'm currently in one. So my current strategy is total detachment. I don't care what happens.
Okay.
I would like it to go a certain way, but I have accepted if it doesn't. And sometimes that clears up something for something new to come in. And so I really try and embrace that after having a very human, internal meltdown.
Absolutely.
And getting all gracious. Yeah.
Absolutely. It sounds like a bit of working on your business, working in your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. Last couple of questions. I'm very aware I'm now taking up a lot of your time. So do you have any advice for people who are looking to scale their business and create a team? Obviously, you mentioned that you've got your finance person, local person. What would you suggest?
I've had the benefit of working with some people who are not in my business, like they have their own consultancy, say, or they're solo operators. And so that's been great because it kind of just is a dip in, dip out project specific thing, which has worked great. So I have learned now that you just need to dedicate time to train someone if they are new to it. Obviously, if they have the skill set, you can slot right in. So, yeah, I guess it just depends where your business is or what you can afford, really, on what level of person. So I think that's the thing I underestimated, like just how entry level someone might be with what you need. But, so far so good.
Exactly. So do you kind of remember the point where you kind of said, like, right, now's the time to scale, like I've got to grow this a bit? Like, do you remember that kind of moment where you had to have that honest chat with yourself?
Yeah, I certainly think it was overdue too. I took on things that filled up my calendar that just didn't even have space to bring someone on. I mean, I couldn't change it at the time. It was just running with the momentum of things. Yeah, and I didn't think I could have anticipated it either because I was like, no, well, here are these things, go for it. So actually this kind of happened as a bit of I was pushed into it actually. Someone needed to keep someone on a part-time basis and asked if I had any work that I might need. And I thought, I'm sure I do. Something that it had been a goal of mine to, whether it was a VA or something to go down that path. And so this actually forced me into it. It was overdue. So I was, quite booked up with a couple of projects and just didn't have that time to carve out to sit with someone and transfer the knowledge and the tasks that I needed at the time. So it was hard because I couldn't really anticipate it. But then once those things cleared away, then I could bring someone in. So, yeah, I guess it needs more forward planning, but also the right fit as well, knowing that someone can be flexible and build up their time if they need it. Because it certainly isn't a full-time person I could have. So, yeah, I was just trying to justify adding that in. But otherwise, it's, working with people on a project basis. So, connecting when you need a certain skill set has been great and working well so far.
Amazing. Final question from me. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what Saltwater Nomads is doing with the current situation in Ukraine.
Sure. So I probably, like a lot of people, have been glued to my screens and just really in shock, and certainly bringing back a lot of memories of watching the Croatian conflict from so long ago. And so one of the things we've actually had, not only through Saltwater, but I'm also co-founder of the Digital Nomad Association Croatia. So Croatia can currently be entered without a visa if you are Ukrainian. And, a lot of Ukrainians have tech skills and things. So they, as they're currently not in the European Union, would be eligible to apply for the Digital Nomad visa. However, I do understand that there's going to be other avenues for Ukrainians across Europe. I'm not sure exactly what they are. We've offered up co-working if anyone needs a free place to come just to either get away from where they are. So hopefully that will stay for as long as we can offer it. And if people need it, because I think even if you are here and working, like, hey, that's a cost that you could send home instead or for other needs. The other thing with some of the events that they have coming up, I've also been thinking about how to incorporate this. I use a few Ukrainian companies or companies that have Ukrainian staff, so I will definitely be keeping them engaged and upping them if it is a fit. So, yeah, that's certainly one way. And, yeah, I guess in the future, looking out for any other, you can see just on LinkedIn, like people who have Ukrainian heritage and what they're doing. And so supporting, if it's an initiative or something like that, coming out from professional networks.
Amazing. I know there's a few people who are based in Croatia and Split who could potentially be listening in, so I'll make sure to add them in the descriptions and whatnot below so they can have a little look.
Sounds great. And we have a Facebook group for Split.
Yes.
Which has about 1,700 members. So I saw some conversations happening. So I thought, hey, if someone wants to post whatever they're doing to keep it unified.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Tanja, thank you so much for joining me today and for putting your time aside.
Thanks, Anne. I hope I made sense with my hands.
Absolutely.
It is my third meeting and almost 11 p.m. Oh, done all right.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, okay. Time to wrap up. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Remote Life. And thank you, Tanja, for your awesome insights. You can find links to her website and socials below. Tag Tanja at saltwater.nomads and myself, Han, at Han Meets World. And let us know your favourite way to get to know a culture. You can also find the podcast on Instagram at The Remote Life Podcast. Thank you so much again for listening, and we can't wait to remote work with you again soon.